that feeling when you're like lying in bed, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're staring at the ceiling, completely exhausted, but suddenly your brain just decides to hit play on this like highlight reel of your absolute worst
It's a
moments.
dreaded 2 a.m. cringe attack. I mean, it is just a universal experience.
It really is.
And it is absolutely brutal when your own mind forces you to relive things you'd really, rather forget.
Yeah, it's like your mind is this unforgiving archivist, right?
Yeah.
Just pulling out these old dusty files, pointing at them and saying, like, look at how badly you messed up that conversation. Look at that terrible career choice.
Oh, totally. We look at those memories as undeniable, concrete proof of our flaws.
Exactly. But what if we've been reading those files completely wrong from the very beginning,
That is the big question.
right? So, welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and today we're looking at this really incredible piece by a writer named Lunarize. It's called The Hidden Wisdom Inside What We Think We Did Wrong.
I'm so glad we're talking about this. I'm your expert guide for today. And this piece, it just radically reframes our entire relationship with our own slip-ups, regrets, failures, all of that stuff.
Yeah, our mission today is to kind of shortcut that path for you, the listener. We want to extract those big aha moments from the article and move away from, like, information overload into pure applicable wisdom. Because it tackles such a vital issue for anyone living in a world that implicitly demands constant perfection.
It really does. The traditional way we define a misstep is just completely dismantled here.
Okay, let's unpack this because the central mind-bending premise hits right out of the gate. And it hinges on the word itself.
Yes, the literal word.
Right? Because most of us think a mistake is something that went wrong, like a calculation error or a fundamental bug in your operating
A
system.
flaw in who you are.
Exactly. But if you just break the word apart, it reveals a much quieter truth. A mistake is literally just a mistake.
I love that. That linguistic reframing changes everything.
It really does.
Because when you look at it that way, you realize life simply presented a moment to you. And you responded to that moment with the exact level of awareness you possessed at that specific time.
Right, at that time.
Yeah. Nothing was inherently broken or objectively wrong. Something was just unseen. You were acting on incomplete data because your consciousness just, it hadn't expanded to see the full picture yet.
So if a mistake is just a mistake,
Yeah.
right, a moment where we simply didn't have the full script yet, why does realizing we made one feel like a physical punch to the gut?
Oh, it's so painful.
It is. We hold ourselves to this impossible standard of retroactive omniscience, like we should have known.
We do, and that brings us to the clash between our cultural conditioning and our actual human evolution.
Okay, say more about that.
Well, our culture trains us from a very young age to fear mistakes. I mean, think about the mechanics of the school system.
Oh, right, the grading.
Exactly. A mistake is a bright red X on a test. It lowers your grade. In the workplace, a mistake is a strike against your performance review. It affects your livelihood.
Yeah, the stakes feel huge.
They are huge.
Right.
So over decades, our nervous systems are systematically conditioned to believe that mistakes are definitive evidence that we are careless or unprepared or simply not good enough. We internalize the red X as a character flaw.
We are so terrified of that red X. But hindsight isn't a red X.
No, it's not.
It's like, think about rewatching a really complex thriller movie.
Okay, yeah.
Think about the first time you watch it. You're just following the main plot, trying to keep up. You completely miss all the subtle clues, like the lingering camera shot on the seemingly innocent neighbor, or that weird offhand comment the detective makes in scene 2.
Right, you're just not looking for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you reach the massive twist ending.
And your entire understanding of the narrative shifts in an instant.
Boom. Right. So you go back and watch the movie a second time, and suddenly those subtle clues are glowing neon signs. You're practically yelling at the screen.
Because it's so obvious now.
Yes. But you weren't wrong the first time you watched the movie. You weren't a bad audience member.
Not at all.
You just didn't have the full picture yet. Your awareness hadn't reached the level required to decode those clues.
What's fascinating here is that the first viewing was your initial take. The clues you didn't notice were your mistakes. The second viewing is your expanded consciousness.
Wow. Yeah.
The trap of hindsight is looking back at that first viewing and calling yourself stupid for not knowing the ending. But hindsight is simply a new consciousness looking at an old moment. The very fact that you can look back and cringe actually means your perception has expanded.
That is so powerful. We are basically judging our past selves using the very wisdom our past selves gave us.
Precisely. We use our growth as a weapon against ourselves.
Which is so unfair. And that leads into this beautifully specific image in the piece. Lunarize talks about how life is not a straight line toward perfection.
Right.
It is a spiral of expanding perception.
I think a straight line is an incredibly fragile geometric concept to base a life on, because if your life is a straight line, any deviation is a failure. You have literally fallen off the path and you have to scramble to get back on track.
But a spiral changes the entire architecture of how we view our lives.
So?
Well, a spiral means you're constantly circling back over familiar territory, facing similar challenges and similar relationship dynamics, but just from a slightly higher vantage point each time.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So, to you listening right now, if you are actively feeling regret over a past action, that feeling is the literal, undeniable proof that your consciousness has already moved forward up the spiral.
It's proof of growth.
Yes. The past version of you did the best it could with the awareness available. The present version sees more.
And the future version will see even more. If you never notice any mistakes in your past, it generally means you are either not reflecting on your experiences or you are blindly repeating the same patterns without any new awareness.
So true.
Recognizing the mistake is the actual victory. It is the engine of the spiral.
Okay, but I want to push back a little here, or at least let's unpack this in real time.
Sure, go for it.
Because understanding that life is a spiral of perception is like a beautiful theory. But in practice, how do we actually catch these mistakes in the moment? Like, before they become regrets, we have to dissect at 2 a.m.
Well, the answer actually lies in the body. The text introduces the concept of the sacred pause. It's that tiny gap between stimulus and response.
The sacred pause.
Yeah. Mistakes most often happen when we are operating on autopilot. A situation triggers us, and we react automatically. We fire off an angry email, or we agree to a project we don't have time for.
Oh, the people-pleasing, yes. I know that one.
Right. We make a choice rooted entirely in fear without letting deeper intelligence speak.
Okay, but wait. I have to push back on the idea that it's always just autopilot.
Okay, what do you mean?
Aren't there times when we make a mistake, and in that exact split second, we actually know we're doing the wrong thing, but we just react too fast anyway?
Oh, absolutely.
It's not necessarily a lack of awareness in that moment. It's a lack of brakes. We feel the wrongness, but the words just fly out of our match anyway.
That is incredibly common, and it highlights exactly why the pause is called sacred. You possess the awareness, right, but you didn't give it the necessary space to operate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The goal isn't to reach some enlightened state where you never feel defensive or never have a reactionary impulse. We're human. The goal is to simply lengthen that pause between the stimulus and the reaction.
But how do we actually do that when the adrenaline is already spiking? I mean, the impulse to defend yourself or lash out feels so fast.
It does. It requires a mechanical disruption of the nervous system.
Mechanical? Like what?
Well, when you feel that immediate urge to react, you have to find a way to anchor yourself in the physical present for just 1 or 2 seconds. It can be as simple as shifting your attention to the physical sensation of your feet riding flat on the floor.
Oh, wow. Just noticing your feet.
Yeah, or taking one intentional, slow breath before opening your mouth. That brief, intentional grounding prevents the amygdala, the reactive part of your brain, from hijacking the moment.
So it buys you time.
Exactly. It gives your conscious mind a single second to catch up and choose a response rather than just a knee-jerk reaction.
And what we are making space for in that pause is intuition. And what I found so fascinating here is that intuition is not presented as an abstract, philosophical thought.
No, it's very visceral.
It is intensely, undeniably physical. The text describes it as a contraction in the stomach, or like a soft opening in the chest.
Yes.
It's a quiet somatic knowing that does not originate from logic at all.
And that's because your body processes vast amounts of environmental and emotional data. It recognizes misalignment long before your conscious brain can articulate why something is off.
That's incredible.
Right. So that contraction in the stomach is your nervous system processing subtle cues and hitting the alarm.
But I have to imagine we override that stomach contraction because we're terrified of looking illogical to other people. Like, we demand a bibliography from our own instincts before we were willing to trust them.
We do. We have been systematically conditioned to trust external authority over our own internal awareness. We are taught to look for logic, to seek permission, to consult the experts, to follow the established rules on paper.
Yeah, show me the data.
Exactly. We are taught to completely ignore the tight, anxious knot in our stomach if the spreadsheet or the resume suggests it's a good idea.
We outsource our knowing. We prioritize a pros and cons list over a bodily warning system that has literally been keeping human beings alive for thousands of years.
It's wild when you think about it.
It is. So every single mistake becomes an invitation to reclaim that internal territory, to reconnect with the body's intelligence.
Yeah.
Looking back at a regret, we can ask ourselves gently, what did I feel at that exact moment?
Yeah.
What physical signal did my body send that I chose to overlook?
And answering that question transforms a moment of regret into a masterclass in your own intuition. You begin to catalog what your unique physical warning signs actually feel like, which makes them much harder to ignore the next time you're standing on the spiral.
Okay, so if we stop outsourcing our intuition
Right.
and we start forgiving our own mistakes,
Yeah.
how does that change what happens when someone else completely messes up and hurts us?
Ooh, that's the real test.
It is, because once we recognize we've missed a signal, our default internal reaction is usually brutal self-judgment. And how we treat ourselves dictates how we treat everyone else.
It forces a massive shift in how we relate to the world. We have to move from judgment to curiosity.
What does that look like?
Well, judgment dictates, I should have known better. That phrasing instantly creates shame, and shame fundamentally closes off the ability to learn.
They just shut down.
Right. Curiosity asks a completely different question. What was I unable to see then that I can see now? Curiosity opens the learning process by acknowledging the spiral of perception.
To ground this, Lunarize actually shares a deeply vulnerable personal reflection about a piece of feedback her husband gave her. And honestly, this is the emotional core of the entire concept for me.
It's a very brave story to share.
Yeah.
Her husband pointed out that she had virtually zero tolerance for mistakes. He observed that when someone hurt her, disappointed her, or broke her trust, she would just close the door. She would quickly discard people when they made mistakes with her.
That is a harsh mirror to have held up to you. And her initial reaction was pure defensiveness, which is arguably the most relatable part of the piece.
Oh, 100%.
She heard that feedback and immediately told herself, I don't discard people. I just have strong boundaries. I value honesty. I'm protecting my energy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, she basically weaponized therapy language to build an intellectual shield.
Yes. Weaponized therapy language.
It is a very modern defense mechanism. We use terms like protecting my energy or holding boundaries to justify cutting people off the second they mess up, completely avoiding the vulnerability of working through conflict.
It sounds so evolved, like I'm just holding boundaries.
Right.
But if you peek behind that shield, you usually find something much more fragile. She allowed that sacred pause we discussed. She sat with his words quietly, and the deeper truth that surfaced was profound.
It really was.
Her intolerance for others' mistakes didn't start in adulthood. It stemmed directly from her own childhood fear of getting things wrong.
She carried this heavy, quiet fear that she was always making too many mistakes, that she was somehow doing life incorrectly. And children often internalize that red X mentality we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
They believe love and safety are conditional on being correct. So her intolerance wasn't actually about maintaining high standards for the people around her. It was a direct projection of the impossible, punishing standards she was holding for herself.
That's the kicker. When we are terrified of our own flaws, we cannot tolerate flaws in others because it feels too threatening. It feels contagious almost.
Yes.
If I let your mistake slide, it means I might have to let my own mistake slide, and my conditioning tells me that is dangerous.
But as she reflected on this, she began to view her past through a different lens. Many of the things she had harshly labeled as mistakes in her own life weren't mistakes at all. They were experiments.
I love that. They were experiments. They were messy attempts to understand life, to figure out complex relationships, to discover her own identity.
Yeah.
She tried something, she observed the outcome, and she learned. Those messy experiments are exactly the mechanism that sharpened her intuition. They were the very things that taught her what aligned with her and what didn't.
And that realization leads to the ultimate relational shift. She reasoned that if her own past mistakes were actually just essential learning experiments on the spiral, then the exact same thing must be true for other people.
Right. They are on their own spiral.
Exactly. When someone else's actions cause harm, disappointment, or betrayal, what she perceives as a malicious or careless mistake might simply be a moment where their awareness has not yet fully arrived.
Their awareness just hasn't arrived yet. That is a staggering amount of grace to offer someone who has let you down.
It really is.
Now, it is critical to state that this does not mean abandoning boundaries. It doesn't mean staying in situations where you are being actively harmed or chronically mistreated.
No, absolutely not. It just invites a much more nuanced, mature approach to human relationships. It asks a really difficult question. Can you hold both truth and compassion at the exact same time?
Yeah.
Can you hold the boundary that says, this behavior is unacceptable to me and I will not participate in it, while simultaneously holding the compassion that says, this person is simply in their own spiral of learning and they are currently missing the take?
Wow. It's a difference between cutting someone out of your life with bitterness and hatred versus stepping back with understanding and wishing them well on their spiral.
Yeah.
It changes the internal weather of your own mind. You aren't carrying the heavy burden of their failure anymore.
And the moments she judged most harshly in her own life eventually became the birthplace of her greatest clarity. The mistakes were the prerequisites for her wisdom.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this right now?
Yeah.
We need a completely new definition of what a mistake actually is. A mistake is not a failure. It is not a permanent scar on your permanent record. It is a mistake that is slowly, organically turning into wisdom.
A beautiful way to put it.
Thanks. Life is incredibly generous. It always offers another take. There will be another conversation. There will be another opportunity to respond to a similar challenge. And next time, you will do it from a deeper level of awareness.
The ultimate relief hidden in this philosophy is that the pressure is lifted. We no longer need to be perfect. We only need to be present enough to learn.
Just present enough.
Yeah. If you can maintain that presence, if you can anchor your feet to the floor to stretch that sacred pause, and if you can listen to the subtle contraction in your stomach, you are navigating the spiral successfully. Growth doesn't happen because we successfully avoid mistakes. Growth happens entirely because we are willing to mine them for the wisdom they contain.
I couldn't agree more. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. We've talked about how our past mistakes were actually just the messy experiments we desperately needed to develop our internal radar.
Right.
So, what if the mistake you are most ashamed of right now, the one that keeps you up at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling, is actively becoming the exact, finely tuned intuition you will rely on to make your most important future decision?
I love that question.
Tonight, if your brain decides to hit play on that cringe-inducing highlight reel, don't shrink from it. Grab some popcorn, watch the movie again, and look for the clues you missed the first time around. Because it's not a record of your failures. It's just the story of how you finally learned to see.